Good morning, all. Today we are starting our ninth lecture on automobile engineering. So let's have a look. In our previous lessons, we discussed what is meant by the carburation. Okay, as we know that the carburation is the process of mixing air and fuel in the proper requirements. That is the proper ratio. Proper amount of the air and fuel is to be mixed, and this air-fuel mixture, or it's known as the charge, is to be supplied to the engine cylinder, where it is burned and the chemical energy of the fuel is released, and the total energy is produced output, and the work output is produced. So in order to release the chemical correct amount of the energy, so the proper mixing depending upon the various conditions, that's the operating conditions of the engine, such as during the acceleration, during ideal condition, during the cruising. Okay, so depending upon the various operating conditions of the automobile, different amount of the air fuel mixture is to be required, and this proper supply of this air fuel mixture or the charge is done by using a carburator. Okay, so the carburation is the process of mixing of the air and fuel in the proper ratio, and the carburetor is the device where this carburation is taking place. And we discussed the what do you mean the carburation and the carburetor. And today we are discussing a simple carburetor. How is a simple carburetor is working? Okay, so what do you mean by a simple carburetor? Here you can see the diagram of a simple carburetor. I think you are all of you have seen these things. You can check your bike or motorcycle. Okay, you can see this in almost all the all vehicles possess this carburetor. Nowadays changed, the fuel injection type is changed, but in all vehicles you can see it. So a simple carburetor consists of different parts such as the float chamber. As you can, we will discuss these things in detail. Okay, so the parts are the float chamber and main fuel jet, venturi, and jet tube, and the throttle valves. Where there is a float in the float chamber, with the help of the fuel pump, fuel is supplied to the float chamber from the fuel tank through the strainer. Okay, we can call this fuel assembly as a simple carburetor. So the main carburetor consists of these four portions, like the float chamber is there, and float is there, and the venturi, jet tube, and throttle valve, etc. And here just we have discussed the various parts, and in our coming slides we will discuss these things in detail. Okay, so wait for that. So now let's discuss the working of a simple carburetor. How a carburetor is working. What is the working principle? As you see in here, this seems to be very simple device. Okay, carburetor. Let's say you can see this is a very small one and it is very simple in its look. But actually, it's not the thing because it's very complex. The carburetor is a complex device. The working within it is very complex. It's like our heart. Okay, it seems to be very simple, but its working is very complex. So I think all of you have studied the venturi meter in your previous this fluid mechanics lessons, and you have completed these our practical lessons with this venturi meter device. I think all of you clear about what is the venturi meter and what is a venturi area. For example, you can here see the converging sound here. Okay, and there is throat region, which is the minimum cross-sectional area, and there is a diverging area. What will happen when air is flow through this area? As the cross-section area is converging, that is the area cross-section is reducing, what will happen? When the area is reducing, we know that for the continuity secant area into velocity is a constant. As the area decreasing, the velocity will be increased. And there will be maximum flow area in throat region, where there is the cross-sectional area is minimum, which means a velocity will be maximized. What will happen if the velocity increases? There's a pressure drop will be created. A vacuum is be created in this throat area. Okay, so there is a vacuum is created. So what will happen if we connected this throat area to a liquid in a container? The liquid will be rise from the container to this region because of this pressure difference. As there is a flow area is reduced, so the velocity will be increased. When the velocity increase, it means that there is a pressure drop. So there is a a small pressure is created. So if we keep taken a container and it consists of some particular amount of liquid is there, and we are connecting this liquid container with this throat area. So the liquid is in atmospheric pressure, and here there's a low pressure is there. So liquid will be rise from this atmospheric pressure area to this throat region where the pressure is very small. There's a vacuum pressure only. Okay. So liquid will be get rise. This is the working principle of a simple carburetor. Okay, let's a venturi region is used in which. So this is the diagrammatic representation of a simple carburetor. Here you can see the various parts of a simple carburetor. This is what I already said you. There is an airflow and this is the throat region, and if we connect this throat region to a fuel tank, this is the fuel tank. Okay, the green one, this is the fuel tank, and it consists of a fuel, or a particular amount of fuel is there, and which is under pressure of atmospheric pressure, or it is in a high pressure. Okay, let's assume that it is under atmospheric pressure, and this throat region is connected to this fuel tank by a tube. And as we know that when the air is flowing through, the air molecules are indicated by these blue dots. Okay, the blue dots indicate the air molecules and this green dots indicates the fuel molecules. As the air molecule is flowing through this region, that is throat region, its area into velocities are constant, as we know that in the case of a continuity equation. So here the area, cross-sectional area, is reduced in the throat region. As the area reduces, it means the velocity is increased and there is a pressure drop is created. There is a low pressure area is created here. So here there is a low pressure area, and here in the pressure tank there is a high pressure. So there is a pressure difference, a pressure gradient. Pressure gradient means there is a pressure difference is there between this tank and this throat area. So whenever there is a pressure difference is created, the fuel molecules in this tank has a tendency to rise through this tube and get will be reached here, and they will be get atomized here and will be mixed with this air molecules. So air fuel mixture, the fuel mixture or the charge is coming out through this way. Okay, so this is the size of the venturi. So this venturi here, in this venturi you can see here the portion number as 2 here, or the section BB. This is the venturi area. So here you can see that air is entering into the top of the region, and the fuel from the fuel tank is get into this region through orifice, and the air film is coming out through this region. So we will discuss this working in detail in upcoming slides. So let's discuss the various parts of a simple carburetor. Okay, so here you can see that there is a carburetor body is there, and there's a float fuel tank float chamber is there, or you can say it's a fuel bowl. Okay, fuel from the fuel tank after straining passed through a strainer and it reaches this float chamber. Okay, there is a, you can see a float. Working is just in this float or float chamber working is just similar like our flush tank which is in your bathrooms. Okay, so let's discuss these things. So now let's discuss the various parts of a simple carburetor. You have to draw this schematic diagram of the simple carburetor. This is a schematic diagram and the various parts are shown here. So first one is there's a float chamber in a simple carburetor that is open to the atmosphere. So this is the float chamber. Okay, this is the float chamber. You can see a pink colored here. Okay, this is pink colored one. This is the fuel. So pink colored one is the fuel, and the fuel is occupied in a chamber. And this one. Okay, please notice this mouse pointer. Here you can see this one is the float chamber. Inside of this there is a fuel or button maybe, and this green colored one is the float. And you should note that the float chamber is remain open to the atmosphere. There's a vent is provided to the atmosphere. So always the pressure of the liquid or the fuel inside this float chamber is atmospheric. The pressure of the fluid or the liquid, or normally in float chamber we are using the whatever the fuel. Okay, the pressure of the fuel is atmospheric because it's in direct contact with this atmosphere. There's a vent is provided here, you can see here. Fuel from the external fuel tank. So we are provided the external fuel tank. The fuel in the external tank is supplied to the float chamber with the help of a fuel pump. So here you can see that outside there's a fuel tank is there. So we have to transfer this fuel in the fuel tank to this float chamber. Okay, so we have to transfer. So this is the fuel indicate the, and this one is just a schematic representation of the carburetor portions only. So here we can there will be a fuel pump will be there, and after that there will be a fuel tank. So fuel in the fuel tank is pumped by using a fuel pump, and this pumped fuel is just get into this strainer. Okay, the fuel from the fuel tank is filtered using a strainer. What is the purpose of this strainer? To filter the fuel. There may contain some impurities. Okay, so we have to filter all these impurities or dust particles is fine in the fuel. Otherwise, it will be trapped here or it will block these passages. So it will lead to the misfunctioning of this carburetor system. Okay, so after straining, which will remove any solid particles or any dust particles that is present in the fuel. Now, the fuel from the float chamber is supplied to the main nozzle, which is the part of the jet tube. Okay, so here we can see the different nozzles are there. The fuel tank is connected to this venturi region, that is the section 2 where a fuel metering orifice is there. And here you can see the fuel discharge nozzle is there, and this is the float chamber, and there's a float is provided. Okay, this flow from fuel to the float chamber to the main nozzle is carried out by the main fuel jet. There's a main fuel jet is provided, and this main fuel jet supply this, or main fuel jet means the fuel metering orifice. Here you can see that the fuel discharge nozzle. This one is the main nozzle. The fuel in this fuel tank or this float chamber. Okay, this is the float chamber. Fuel from this float chamber is directly entered into this venturi area. Here we already discussed in the float chamber there is atmospheric pressure is there, and this venturi area. Here you can see the cross sectional area is minimum. As the cross sectional area is minimum, as the air is flowing through this passage, what will happen? The cross sectional area is minimum, so velocity will be maximum. So okay, and there is a low pressure is created, vacuum pressure is created in this venturi region. So here is a vacuum, okay, negative pressure is there, and here there is an atmospheric pressure. So high pressure area to low pressure area, the flow of fuel will be taking place. The fuel will be discharged through this fuel discharge nozzle. Okay, the engine sucks the air from the atmosphere through the choke valve. Here you can see a choke valve. This is a choke valve. This is normally just like a butterfly type of valve here, and it is almost in the open position. This is the open position in the direction of flow. Okay, the shock valve is normally in the open position. The engine sucks the air from the atmosphere. So this is the air, and here is the air, and air is entering into this carburetor system through this way. That is section AA. Here you can see that, and section 1 or the region 1 here. Okay, air is entering through this way, and the choke valve is open as the air flows through this way. As we know that for this airflow is there, so as it reach in section 2 here, that is the BB section, what will happen? The velocity of the air is increased due to the reduction in the cross section area. As the velocity increases, there is a low pressure is created. This air passes through the venturi, it causes the reduction of the area of the cross section at the throat of the venturi. As we already discussed, what will happen? Due to this, the pressure at the main nozzle decreases and the velocity of the air increases. This difference in pressure induced as the float chamber and the main nozzle causes the mixture of the fuel and incoming atmospheric air. Due to this low pressure, the fuel from the float chamber rises through this fuel metering orifice, and it is discharged through the fuel discharge nozzle. And these fuel molecules will be get mixed with these air molecules. Okay, so an atomization is taking place. Increased velocity of air affects the venturi partially vaporize the engine fuel. Okay, the fuel molecules get vaporized because of the high velocity of the air. After the venturi partially vaporizes the air engine fuel, which is then totally evaporated by the heat of the intake manifold of the combustion chamber and cylinder walls. As we all know that, so engine is working at a high temperature and the intake manifold will be at a very hot condition. So what will happen? The air fuel mixture or this charge will be evaporated, or the fuel molecules get evaporated. Okay, carburetor only install a petrol engine because petrol engines are quantity governed. Okay, here the speed of the engine is depending upon the quantity of the fuel supply. Okay, so we have mainly it is used in the petrol engines. The carburetors are mainly provided for petrol engines. Before that, I would like to give you one more thing needs to be discussed here. When the level of the fuel in this float chamber, okay, here now this is the level of the fuel. Always the you should note that the level of the fuel in this float chamber is always less than that of this position of this discharge nozzle. Okay, it will be just below that of this discharge nozzle. And when the level of the fuel in the fuel tank is decreased, what will happen? The float will be moved out. Okay, here this is a float valve is there. As the fuel is delivered to the this injury area, there will be a decrease in the level of the fuel. Okay, this is the present level, and when the fuel level will be decreased, what will happen? The float will be moved down. As the float will be moved down, here you can see a fuel supply valve is there, or the metering nozzle is here. Okay, this is the needle valve is here. This one. Okay, it's a needle valve. This is the needle. If at this condition, when the float chamber is full, this needle valve cross this passage and there will be no entry of the fuel into this float chamber. When the level of the fuel in this float chamber decreases, what will happen? The float will move down and the needle valve moves from its seat. And what will happen? The fuel will be get into this float chamber. When the level of the fuel raised, the float will be moved up and it will again cross this passage. And its more up and down motion is controlled by means of a float pivot. It is pivoted here. Okay, this float is pivoted here. When we open the throttle valve, here you can see the throttle valve. This is the throttle valve. So when we open the throttle valve, which is present at the bottom of the jet of the tube, it allows more air flows through the venturi tube and a more quantity of the air fuel mixture is supplied to the engine, causes the engine develop more power. This is throttle valve. This throttle valve is connected to the accelerator. When we rotate, for example, when we press the accelerator pedal, what will happen? This accelerator pedal is connected to this throttle valve by means of a cable. When we press this accelerator pedal, what will happen? We are opening. Normally this is in the closed position. Closed position means this is the position, throttle valve position is here. Normally in the closed position, when we press the throttle, that is throttle valve, that is means the accelerator pedal, or we rotate our accelerator in our back, what will happen? We are opening this throttle valve. So it will be widely open. As it is open, the flow area, as we know that the piston is moving the downside, and there is a vacuum is created inside the engine cylinder. Also, there is a negative low pressure is created. So as we also, when we also just open this throttle valve, more air will be get into this, sucked into this cylinder. So more power will be produced. As the more air will produce, more pressure drop or more velocity will be there in the throttle area, or more pressure drop will be created. So more fuel will be get into this venturi area. When we close the throttle valve, reverse action takes place and the power of the engine reduces. Reverse action means the flow of the air gets reduced. So here is the construction of the carburetor is shown here. So this is the construction details. So here you can see a carburetor body is there, and this one is the choke valve. This orange colored one is the choke valve, and this light green colored one is the venturi area, and this blue colored one, this is the throttle one. Okay, so we are connected a float chamber to this one, and the float chamber consists of the fuel, and there is a float is provided inside this float. So this one is the needle valve, which provide the float opening and closing of the float chamber. When it is closed, there will be no fuel entry to this float chamber. As it's moved down, what will happen? Fuel is get into this float chamber. This is a fuel supply line, and this one is connected to this region. This is pressure, and this is the ideal line. Okay, and here you can see the fuel discharge nozzle. This is the ideal screw. Okay, and the normal condition, this is a atmospheric pressure. There is a, this is one is a here atmospheric pressure will be there, and the choke is fully open and the throttle is also fully open. So what will happen? Here it is atmospheric pressure, and here it is a low pressure is created. So fuel in this float chamber is raised through this fuel discharge nozzle, and it will get mixed with this air molecules. So this is the air passage. Here it is indicate the air passage. As the air is passing through this way, here in this venturi region, a low pressure is created. So here is a low pressure, and here is the atmospheric pressure, and fuel from the fuel chamber is get into this venturi area by means of this vacuum that is created. Okay. So what will happen if we cross this chalk wall? Normally in cold starting, that is if you are not operated your vehicle for a long period of time, what will happen? The engine will be very cold and it will be very difficult to start the engine. Normally nowadays, because in cold season it is very difficult to start the engines. So in such times, we will we are unable to start this engine. So what will you do? We are just operating our choke valve. We are operating choke valve means normally the choke valve in the open position. When we are operating the choke valve means we are closing this choke valve. What will happen? When we close the choke valve, the flow of the air gets reduced. The flow of air gets reduced, but the fuel will be more. So more fuel will be provided to the engine, but the air content is reduced. So it is a rich mixture is provided during the starting. Okay, or maybe a stoichiometric mixture is provided. It is what is 10:1 ratio or vice versa. So during this cold starting, we require a rich mixture is required. So we are reducing or obstructing the flow of air, and more fuel is to be provided. As more fuel is get into the system, what will happen? More power output is produced and engine will get started. And second condition is in our normal, that is cruising condition or ideal condition. So okay, ideal condition, let's discuss the ideal condition. Ideal means we are not operating our throttle like in our very heavy traffic condition or like that. What will happen? The throttle is not fully open. Throttle is normally in open position in our, for example, if in the case of a traffic block is there, and but the engine is, we are not get off turning off our engine. The engine is turned on, but we are not providing any acceleration. Okay, that is an ideal operating condition. So you can visualize what will happen as in a traffic bubble or such a situation. In situation we have to keep the engine running without getting it off. For that, we have to supply the air fuel mixture into, there is a cycles to be that is the combustion should be taking place. But the throttle is closed. As the throttle is closed, the supply of the air to this way is very small. A very fewer amount of air is passing through this way. So what will happen? There's no the pressure drop is very small. So in that condition, what will happen? The fuel in this float chamber get into this way. This is the ideal supply. Okay, ideal jet is this. This is the normal jet, that is the normal operating condition. This is the ideal jet. The fuel will be get into through this way, and it is mixed with this air molecules. Okay, like this one. This is what happened in the case of ideal operating conditions. So today we discussed the various situations like the working of a simple carburetor, how it is working. There is a pressure drop is created between the float chamber and this the venturi area. Due to this pressure drop, the fuel in the float chamber is raised to this venturi area, and proper mixing of the air and fuel is taking place, and it is supplied, the charge is supplied to the engine cylinder while by the opening of this throttle valve. Depending upon the opening, the air fuel mixture ratio will be different. And during what will happen during the cold starting, we also discussed, and during the ideal condition also. Okay, ideal condition, the fuel is supplied to the ideal jet that is shown here. So I think all of you understood the working of the simple carburetor. So thank you for watching. That's for today.